my dears. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com joining you with another episode of Chronic Wellness. Today, I am going to talk about the super uplifting topic of DNRs. Do not resuscitate. That's what that stands for. And I am not an expert on this subject, but I am going to tell you a few things that I know. So a do not resuscitate order is something that a person, such as myself, might craft in order to tell emergency personnel or people at a hospital that if I go unconscious or my heart fails or I stop breathing, that I do not mean to be resuscitated. And this is an official document like, what is that called that you submit to your doctor or your hospital? Like the living will, the end of life paperwork that you can submit. I cannot think of what it's called right now. Medical advance directive. Saying, I do not want to be resuscitated if I stop breathing or my heart stops beating. And it is a serious matter to contemplate, obviously, because it means that you will not be saved if those things occur. And it's something that for sure, if you have a do not resuscitate order in place, you want to let your next of kin and your loved ones know that that is your plan so that they are not surprised by that fact should those terrible circumstances come into play. And if it is at all unclear, meaning if your paperwork is not in order, if it has not been submitted properly, if the personnel who is on site doesn't have a copy of it, they will err on the side of resuscitating you. And so it is not a small matter to have these ducks in a row. And the reason why it's so important that your next of kin be notified is that they might be the one alerting the emergency personnel. They might be calling 911, they might be at the hospital with you, and they might be the ones having to pull out a copy of the paperwork or show them on the phone or present the DNR to the emergency personnel. And if all of the things are not appropriately checked, signed, dated, the emergency personnel will still resuscitate you. And I can remember a friend of mine who works in a hospital telling me about someone who had DNR tattooed on their neck, believing that that would keep them from being resuscitated by emergency personnel because it was so clearly spelled out on their person. But folks, a tattoo is not a legally binding document, and emergency personnel cannot assume that just because at some point in your life you tattooed DNR on you, that that's still how you feel today, and that that wasn't just a personal choice or someone's initials or something you believed at one point, but it's not a legally binding document. And so it's really critical that this is done the right way. So if you do not want to be resuscitated, talk to your physician about what paperwork you need to file and how to go about doing that. The other thing that I know too from lived experience with a grandmother who had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and was dying in our home is that if we didn't want her to be resuscitated and she did not have a DNR on file, that once she died, we needed to call the funeral parlor and not the emergency vehicles. So if we called an ambulance when she died, they would have tried to bring her back to life. They would have, it would have been incumbent upon them to try to resuscitate her rather than remove her body from our home. And so this is another important thing to know. is that if you are in the process of dying or expect that you are dying or plan to die at home, and once you are dead, if you don't intend to be resuscitated or have someone try to resuscitate you, your family needs to call the funeral home and not emergency services, or emergency services will come and try to revive you. Which, if you've not seen anyone in the process of receiving CPR, it's a pretty violent process. Quite often ribs are broken, and it's a pretty violent pounding on the chest that must be done in order to try to restart someone's heart once it has stopped. So, a few significant facts for you to consider if you have serious health conditions that might mean that you would stop breathing, or your heart might stop beating, or you might become brain dead because of a stroke or other problems. And so it's important to know where you stand and whether or not you want to be resuscitated by emergency services, and then let the people closest to you know your intentions so that they can carry those through if you are not conscious, to have them carried out. Heavy topic today on chronic wellness, but if you have had someone close to you die, then I suspect you know how important it is to have matters of your death taken care of well. I will say that from my brother and mother's passing within 3 months of each other a couple of years ago, I've learned a great deal about how much I want to have things taken care of so that my loved ones can grieve my loss and not have to manage the details of my loss when the time comes. So those are my thoughts for today, and a little information about DNRs. Do you have a DNR? Have you considered it? Do you have experience with someone else in your life and their DNRs? I'm interested to know. So as ever, leave a comment here or elsewhere on social media. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I hope that you will consider doing so. And until we're together again, thank you for spending a little time with me, and be well.